I'm so grateful to Karen, to the democracy panel for just setting the context, setting the stage for not just where we are, but what we can do next. That's a perfect segue to this conversation with Reggie Hudlin. Let me lift up a few words that a social critic said of this brother. He called him, quote, a modern day Gordon Parks. Gordon Parks, of course, the photographer. Gordon Parks, the old school brother who brought us Shaft. Gordon Parks, a true monster in the game who totally redid the blueprint, what some people used to call a Renaissance man. In other words, Reggie Hudlin brought us Boondocks. He brought us Boomerang. He put Chadwick Boseman in the film Marshall. He brought us the godfather of Hollywood. He's produced the Emmys. He's produced the Oscars. He's produced the Image Awards. He has written graphic novels. This brother is a master of culture. You heard Latasha say that culture beats strategy any and every day. Well, this person is a craftsperson of culture, a master of culture, an art, I should say, a director, a producer, a writer extraordinaire, and a member of the board of the William Monroe Trotter Collaborative for Social Justice. So with that said, I want to welcome Reggie to the stage into this keynote conversation.
How you doing, Cornell?
Hey, man, I'm doing fantastic. Just excited, thrilled to be in conversation with you. Now, I have to let you know, we did a dress rehearsal for this conversation when we invited Reggie to teach my class. Now, I'm a decent teacher. He came, took stage, set the tone for the semester, and was extraordinary. So that was the dress rehearsal, right? So I'm really just, I want to take this moment to just ask you about the beginning, which is to say, how did you, as a young person, get into film? Take us back to where you grew up, how you grew up, the folks you grew up around, and help situate who this Renaissance brother is in terms of the aspiring artist in the room tonight.
Yeah, well, I grew up in East St. Louis, Illinois, which is, small, all Black, economically disadvantaged town, but incredible culturally rich. For example, on my house, 2 doors down on one side is where Ike met Tina. 2 doors down on the other side was the home of Brother Joe May, who was a famous gospel singer. And Brother Joe May used to go out on tour with Reverend C.L. Franklin, whose daughter went on to be a popular singer herself named Aretha. So, and 10 blocks from our house is where Chuck Berry created rock and roll. So, and in the 60s, when, you had riots breaking out in Detroit and Watts, and they knew East St. Louis was the next likely place. So they said, okay, how do we prevent that from happening? So they brought in Catherine Dunham, who was also from Illinois. And they said, look, would you come and figure out some kind of arts program to kind of keep them from setting things on fire? And she said, well, it's got to be more than a Band-Aid. And she created a higher education program where she brought in, Black intellectuals. She brought in martial artists from Asia and Brazil. She brought master drummers from Africa and created an arts and education program that was extraordinary. And for example, the drummer with More Cham, whose son Akon went on to become a very successful rapper. It was an incredible program. And because that program was there, they had a recruiter from Yale who came, and my brother said, I'm going to try Yale summer school. Why not? And he did very well there. So he decided to apply, and he got a scholarship, and he went to Yale. And he was a philosophy major. But one day he was walking and he saw a whole bunch of film in a garbage bin, and he said, "Why would someone throw away film? I mean, film does." So he walked into the back of the building, which turned out to be the film program. So he started making documentary movies. And once he started doing that, and this is in the 70s, he realized, well, okay, you're making these little independent movies, but who gets to see them? So he put together a cooperative called the Black Filmmaker Foundation that organized all the Black filmmakers and said, look, we're a nonprofit organization, so if you want to apply for a grant, you can do that, which is what Spike Lee did for She Gotta Have It. He went through the Black Filmmaker Foundation. He put together a book so schools around the country could rent the movies and could arrange for a speaking event. It's like, okay, we have to do, it's not enough to make the movies, you have to do institution building. So I grew up seeing all that, right? And I'm like, that's cool, but I want to take the jump into Hollywood. I have no idea how to do that. I mean, that's like being on one side of the Grand Canyon and going, well, I wanted to get on the other side. How's that supposed to happen? So I ended up going to Harvard for my undergraduate program, which they have a program called Visual and Environmental Studies, which is basically Harvard going, we're embarrassed to have any kind of arts program, but if we have a multidisciplinary program, so you study film, photography, graphic arts, architecture, and you specialize in one of those fields, then okay, I guess that's kind of legitimate. So I did that program, and the program was very documentary film oriented, which is great in a lot of ways because a lot of film programs teach kids to end up making movies about movies. Like, oh, remember that movie from the 1950s? I want to make a version of that. Or that from the 1970s. Documentaries are about being in the actual world, particularly cinema verite documentaries. So that was very, I think, healthy. But our year, which was the class of 83, we kind of all went rogue. And we decided for our senior thesis films, we want to make fiction films. And so we all made little short films that were fictional. And my film was based on observations that I collected in a book. When I was younger, I would tell my older brother, oh, I've got this idea for a movie. So finally he said, just stop telling me your ideas. And he gave me a book for Christmas, and the book was blank. He said, write your ideas in the book. So the summer before my senior year, I took all those ideas and I put them together into a script. Wow. And that script became the basis of a short film called House Party. And that short film became the basis of my first feature film, which was also called House Party. Which now it's been 31 years later. Wow. And people are still talking about it. In fact, New Line's getting ready to make yet another sequel, remake, whatever, because, you know, people really love it. So that started my career. And that movie, we made it for $2.5 million. We made $27 million. That's just theatrical box office. That doesn't include home video and all that other stuff. So it made it's one of the most profitable movies of its decade. And it debuted at the Sundance Film Festival. We won awards. So gosh, you know, we got great reviews. We won awards, and it made a lot of money. So that was a great start to my career.
Now, that's a phenomenal start. You know, to essentially have a college homework assignment turned into a $27 million record-setting film. But can you help situate this film in American history? Meaning, right now, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. When we go back to the time you made House Party, there was a message in that film that still speaks to us today in the middle of this pandemic, in the wake of that pandemic. Can you talk about that?
Well, one of the things I want to do, I mean, I have a theory about movies, right? Which is that I think that people want a complete meal.
Mm.
And a complete meal includes protein. And the cinematic equivalent of protein is ideas that matter, ideas that will improve your life. But you can't be preachy. You can't talk down to people. You have to have a peer-to-peer conversation that respects the intelligence of the audience. At the same time, knowing that the audience is very broad in terms of who they are and where they're from and what their education level is. But if people taste the medicine, they're out. So at the time, safe sex was a burgeoning idea, right? In the 80s, obviously you had, AIDS just becoming a really big deal. So I said, well, let's encourage young people to have safe sex because it's a house party. The point of a house party is to meet somebody and hook up. So we had a scene in the movie where he finally gets the girl and he's got this condom he's been carrying around forever and it's a melted mess. And when he doesn't have a condom, he doesn't have sex with her. So I thought, we've got a little joke in there, but it's a joke with a message and the movie goes on and it's fine. So a year after the movie comes out, we got an award from a health clinic in Newark. So we're talking to the physician who runs the health clinic. And I said, sir, it's really wonderful that you're honoring us for this. But really, I mean, did the movie really make a difference? And he goes, yes. People come to the clinic, they ask for condoms, and they reference your movie. So I said, oh my God, you shoot an arrow into the air, and sometimes it lands and it hits people. So that was a really important encouragement at the beginning of my career. So my goal was to keep doing that, to make sure that the audience has got their protein, but in a perfect entertainment product that never felt preachy or didactic.
Wow. One of the things that, and this as a board member, one of the things we endeavor to do through the Trotter Collaborative is teach and equip young people, students, to engage in multilingual advocacy, right? So in other words, law, policy, history, economics, but also art, film, television, right? To use the languages of advocacy, all of them. And of course, the role of the filmmaker is key. So, one of the things that strikes me is your point about teaching, sending a message, but not being preachy. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? Because there's so many times in so many campaigns when it comes to voting rights, we can sound preachy. Your ancestors died, therefore you should vote.
Right. Well, I heard a little bit of the last panel with Ms. Finney, and there was a really important thing that was said by one of the panelists who said, we focus on campaigns, but not on building democracy. And, there's a lot of anxiety about this upcoming midterm elections because typically Black folks don't participate in midterms. But even bigger than that, there's going to be a bit of cynicism. Like, we came out, we beat the dragon, we beat Trump, but what? Everything's not fixed. We still got to fight. I mean, this voting thing doesn't work. And the message, there's a bigger message we have to send everyone, which is that the fight is never ending. Like in a superhero movie, they go, the never-ending fight of good against evil. And that's really what it is. So instead of going, I can't believe we have to still fight for our right to vote. I can't believe we still have to fight for control over our bodies. We have to say, of course, the evil people, as much as we like, we can't kill them all. So the fight will continue generation after generation. Our grandparents fought it. Our parents fought it, and now it's our turn. And that's in life. You better expect it, and Black folk tend to be very practical minded. And so I think you can say that idea in a pretty straightforward way and just go, this is life. We have to fight for our space. And if we don't, they will kill us. So there is no other choice in life. We have to fight. And, in terms of the kind of, that sense of the term political, I mean, if we want to, we have to set the appropriate expectations of voters in terms of what's going to happen and why they're doing this.
That's right. Certainly, Nsé Ufot lifted up that point that you're making in terms of we're electing public servants, not messiahs, right?
Yes.
But, one thing I'd like to hear your thoughts on. So we just observed 2 days ago on May 18th an anniversary of Plessy versus Ferguson, the Supreme Court decision that enshrined the doctrine of separate but equal. Thurgood Marshall, as we know, went to the Supreme Court, won the case Brown versus Board of Education, and brought to a legal end the doctrine of separate but equal. Could you share with the folks about your struggle to both make the film Marshall, which wasn't about Thurgood Marshall and civil rights, but rather criminal rights, and how did you get Chadwick Boseman to star as Marshall? He's a handsome brother, as was Thurgood Marshall, but they look a little different.
Right. It was a struggle on many levels, but what in life is not. So Thurgood Marshall was always one of my greatest heroes. And part of that is respecting that the battle is on many fronts, right? You have MLK who's, fighting to, to change the laws. You have Malcolm X who's building up our self-image, and then you've got Thurgood Marshall literally in the courtroom, right? And it's so many people to this day still argue, Malcolm versus Martin, as if it's some kind of either or choice, as opposed to no. We need the Air Force, we need the Army, we need the Navy, we need everyone fighting on every front if we're actually going to move forward. So Thurgood, I just thought, gosh, but I just never imagined you could actually get a theatrical feature film made about him. When I started my movie career, it was hard to make a movie with a Black cast that wasn't a comedy. The idea of doing a period movie, which is more expensive, about something like that just seemed impossible. But things change. The Berlin Wall, it seemed like it was going to be there forever. Then, poof, it's down. So all of a sudden, through a bunch of bigger cultural and political things, the appetite in Hollywood had shifted. And suddenly there was an opportunity to make historical films. And a producer friend of mine had this amazing script about Thurgood Marshall. And it was not the script you would expect at all, because it was not about Brown versus Board of Education. It was not about any of the famous cases. Okay. It was actually a relatively unknown case early on in his career when he was the one-man NAACP legal defense organization. And the power of the case was on a couple of fronts. One, you didn't know the case, which meant you didn't know the outcome. So instead of just going, okay, we're going to see a movie about Brown versus Board. We know what happened. We learned that in 5th grade, but we're going to go because it's medicine. Well, you failed already. And the second part of it, it was a rape trial. So it had a salacious quality. Oh, did the black chauffeur rape the white lady of the house? So people go, ooh, wait a minute, it's sensationalist. It's the New York Post, it's TMZ. So you go, okay, salaciousness is the vehicle by which we can talk about some interesting things. And on top of it, in the case, Thurgood was literally muzzled by the judge. So he had to work with a young Jewish attorney who was completely apolitical and somehow train him to be a master lawyer. So you go, okay, here's Thurgood Marshall, the greatest lawyer in the world, with both hands tied behind his back. Can he win? But the first question is, can we get the movie made? So we're trying to put the movie together, and the hottest Black actor on the scene is Chadwick Boseman. He was spectacular in 42. Right. He was spectacular as James Brown.
Right.
So I go to him, and I know he doesn't want to play another historical character, but we had met because I had written the Black Panther comic book for many years. He had just been cast as the Black Panther. We met at a big Hollywood soiree, and we talked all night about Black Panther and what he should do, we just clicked instantly. We're really the same kind of guy. So I came to him, I said, look, Thurgood Marshall, just read the script. He read the script and said, the script's great, but man, I don't really, want to do another historical character. And plus, Thurgood was, so light, some people thought he could pass, depends on your black dar, and I'm chocolate brown, the 18-year-old self of me, watching this movie at Howard, I would be pissed off. So I said, well, because this is not his whole life, it's about this one case. Whether he's light or dark wouldn't affect the facts of this case. Right? He's just a Black guy, dealing with this case in Connecticut, which is one of the other things I liked about it, because it was Northern racism. Southern racism's easy, right? And he said, okay. I said, and on top of that, we talked to Thurgood's family. And Thurgood's family said, if we told our father that the best qualified actor for the job is not going to do it because he's too dark, he would have blown a gasket. He would have been furious. So he said, wow, okay. Well, if essentially the family saying Thurgood says do it, then kind of got it. He said, but I still know, Reggie, I'm doing another historical movie. So I said, hey, let me ask you something. Should a movie about Thurgood Marshall be made? He said, well, of course. I said, well, if you say yes, it'll get made. And if you say no, it won't. And he said, wow, Reg, why you got to put it like that? I said, because that's the truth. And because he was a person who wasn't just about himself and his career, he was about the greater good, he said, I'll do it.
Yeah. I only met him on a few occasions, and but had a chance to spend some time with a really, really beautiful brother. Reggie, I want to give the activists, advocates in the audience an opportunity to ask some questions. Salam, if you are available, if you can queue up some questions. No, Salam. Oh, okay. I've been told I can keep going. So I really want to ask you about the namesake of the William Monroe Trotter Collaborative for Social Justice. So, as you know, Trotter is the first Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Harvard. He was described as a Black radical, right? He was too radical for the NAACP. He got kicked out of the White House because Woodrow Wilson did not like his tone at the same point at which Woodrow Wilson was segregating the federal workforce. But he came to fame. He came to fame when he announced essentially the first national boycott of what is a cinematic masterpiece, the birth, the birth of a nation, which is a rancidly racist Klan glorification film. So now that inspired William Monroe Trotter. But it also, if I understand this correctly, it seems to have inspired you, seems to have inspired Spike Lee, seems to have inspired Oscar Micheaux. How did this racist film impact your career as a filmmaker?
Right. Well, Birth of a Nation is it's so profoundly and thoroughly racist. It's such a extraordinary blueprint for American racism. And it is required viewing if you study film. And I know when I saw it at Harvard, my white classmates, they laughed, they snickered, they were snarkily amused or supportive of the film. And I thought, well, there you have it. If there's any, no need to have any illusions about who your classmates are. And it's so offensive. It goes back to the great Gordon Parks, who said, okay, what's your choice of weapons? And my choice of weapons is I'm going to make movies and books and all kinds of stuff that will counteract this. And, you know, when you create essentially propaganda, which is what Birth of a Nation is, which is what Raiders of the Lost Ark is, you know, all movies, you know, they have a underlying inherent political message, you know, so you go, okay, I'm going to have a body of work that says a bunch of stuff that will deprogram the brainwashing that that is built into the DNA of Hollywood that comes from Birth of a Nation. And I even wrote a book called Birth of a Nation about my hometown, East St. Louis, which seceded from the United States because they figured they could do better. They could do bad all by themselves, and they might be able to do better.
Wow. So let me actually, we have Mahalia Mathalia, who's one of my wonderful, wonderful students. So she's going to lift up some questions from the chat by audio.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the kind introduction, Professor Brooks. I know I can probably speak for all of our audience when I say that this conversation has been engaging as any film that I have seen. So thank you all. Thank you for coming on as a guest, Mr. Hudlin. Now we have a lot of great questions from the audience coming in. And so just to begin and help contribute to the incredible panel that you got all put on tonight, you've generated quite a resume that truly seems like it is out of a movie, Mr. Hudlin. So a question for you from the audience is, what's next for you? What's the next thing you're going to add to the resume?
Wow. Well, there's a couple of things. I just announced a bunch of new projects the other day. Actually teaming up with Tiffany Haddish, we're going to do a once-a-week talk show called Friday Night Vibes on TBS, where we're going to be showing, you know, Black movies, and we'll have a little talk show in between and do that. I'm also teaming up with Oprah Winfrey, and we're going to be doing a 2-hour special called Honoring Our Kings, a celebration of Black fatherhood. And that'll be on next month for Father's Day. I'm also relaunching Milestone Media, which is a Black comic book company. They were founded in the 90s. Some of you may know the character Static Shock from the cartoon that was very popular. We're going to be reviving Static and a host of other multi-ethnic superhero characters in comic books and film and television and any number of other platforms. So that is some of the things I'm doing. Wow. Those are the things I can tell you.
Great. Mahalia, you want to lift up another question?
Absolutely. That all sounds incredible. I know those are some things that I'm going to need to tune in for. On to the next question. In the theme of today's convening, we want the people, our incredible audience, to know how to use art as a tool for activism. Tell our guests, how can art improve voter literacy?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, when we say voter literacy, I mean, that means a lot of different things to me. You know, that's why should we vote? How should we vote? What's the struggle? And look, you know, like it or not, we live in a post-literate world. And, you know, so we have to use all the tools at our disposal. I mean, take a musical like Hamilton, right? Now, I would freely admit, I didn't know a doggone thing about Alexander Hamilton. And if someone had said to me, Reggie, I got this great idea, I'm going to make a rap musical about the first Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, I would go, get out of my office and never, ever, ever come back. It's the worst idea ever, which turned into a masterpiece. Right. You've got children all over America who know everything about the first Secretary of the Treasury because of the genius of Lin-Manuel Miranda. And I look at that and I go, okay, you've got these failure factories all over America masquerading as educational institutions. You've got all these artists who are out of work. Why don't we hire all these artists to make musicals like Hamilton? And let's say they're half as good as Hamilton. Wouldn't that be more effective than what we're currently doing? You know, I've thought often, like, what if we put together a curriculum where we want to cover anything, whether it's history or politics or whatever, but instead of books, make it movies. Like what would be on that list? And, you know, how would you, you know, and what's the conversation you would have after you watch the movies? I mean, could it be worse than what we're doing? I think that's an experiment worth trying.
Wow. Mahali, one more.
Wow, an incredible answer. Thank you so much. And for our last question of the panel, how can younger artists use their platforms and emerging media to share the stories and voices of the marginalized communities that you highlight in your films? And what advice might you give to a burgeoning young artist who's looking to make a difference the way that you have?
Well, what's fantastic about today is that everything you need is in your pocket. This device, you can film a movie, you can edit a movie, and you can distribute it all over the planet, all on this device. And if you don't know what you're doing and you want to learn about movies, you can go on and learn and watch tutorials on it. So there's really no reason why you can't do it. And most young people, they're doing it. So yes, film school is great and all that stuff, but there's really, the barriers are gone. You've already paid for it. It's in your pocket. Everything you need, both in terms of equipment and educational resources, are all on the same device. So just go make things and don't worry about making money or anything. Just make something, make sure it's as good as you can make it, put it online, send it out to the world, hear what the world has to say about it, learn from what they say, and then just keep doing it. Just keep flexing the muscle. The more you use the muscle, the stronger you'll get.
Wow. So, Reggie, I want to ask you to give us close us out with a note of hope. I mean, one of the things that is apparent when you study social justice movements is that you have to give people a sense of agency, a sense of power. And one of the major impediments to a sense of agency, a sense of power, is fear. So if you were talking to your 19-year-old aspiring filmmaker self, in terms of whatever you were afraid of then, and talking to a 19-year-old aspiring filmmaker today with social justice sensibilities, what would you say to them in terms of getting past their fears?
I would say, and this is an answer with all sincerity, dream bigger. Yeah. The reality is, and for so many people, particularly for young Black people, we create ceilings for ourselves. Well, they're not going to let us do that. Oh, that's going to be, and it's like, no. Ignorance is an enormous part of success, right? I think about the Wright brothers, okay? All the greatest scientists said, people can't fly. You can't make a flying machine. So two guys at a bicycle shop said, no, we can make that work. So the fact that they didn't know what they were doing enabled them to have that breakthrough. I think that happens all the time. If you talk to most successful people in any field, they'll just go, man, if I knew how hard that was, I never would have tried. In other words, ignorance was the key to their success. I mean, yes, hard work is important, learning fast, failing fast, getting better and better. But the fact is, things are getting better all the time for Black people. And we hate to admit that. We hate it because, does that mean you're okay with where we are? No, that doesn't mean that. Does that mean that the battle is over? No, of course not. But we're winning. We're winning all the time. It's incremental. It's still a ways to go. It's very frustrating. There's failures too. But, you have to take comfort in the fact that we were slaves. If you were a slave, there was no reason to believe you would ever be anything other, and that your great-great-grandchild would ever be anything other.
Mm.
But somehow, here we are on a computer talking across the country about the next level of freedom, because the freedom we have isn't enough.
Mm.
That's incredible. And we have to celebrate that, congratulate that, and use that as like, well, if we went that far, if we overcame those obstacles, I mean, the next set of obstacles don't involve dogs. They don't involve fire hoses. I mean, you know, everything in the previous panel was talking about didn't involve our lives being in danger. So, damn, if we did that, I know we could get the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you want to do.
You know, I'll simply end on this note of gratitude, because in lifting up that things are getting better, that's not a commentary on how well we're treated.
No.
You're making a commentary on our sense of power, our sense of agency, our own sense of resilience, and comparing where we are to where we are today, where we were to where we are today, and where we can yet go. And I just want to simply say, by way of gratitude, if William Monroe Trotter could be present today, having led the first national boycott against a racist film, and be in conversation with a Black filmmaker who has literally pioneered on television, at the movies, in the publishing industry, who's been a serial entrepreneur, I have to believe that Trotter would be encouraged by what you're doing, and more importantly, the work and the people that you're yet inspiring. So if you were in my class, I'd ask everybody to open their mics and applaud, but we'll have to do that virtually. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love doing it. Hope I was helpful, and let's do it all again.
So appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. So we come to the end of our first day of this spring convening of the William Monroe Trotter Collaborative for Social Justice, and this convening of this Achieving Our Country and Citizen, I should say, an Academy of Citizen Activism. And so I simply want to note for those of you who are looking forward to tomorrow, that tomorrow we will have, providing an activist breakdown, Piper Parabo. We will have a healthcare disparities panel with scholars Marcella Olson, Alden McDonald, moderated by David Williams, young activist Ali Young. We have a wonderful, powerful panel on abolishing the carceral state. And of course, we cap off the day with the teaching experience and actual classroom experience on social justice advocacy. And we have an art and justice segment with W. Kamal Bell, whom you know so well from United Shades of America. Tomorrow will be an extraordinary opportunity for us to come back together. So we want to encourage you to reach out to your friends, your networks, and encourage them to participate in this Academy of Citizen Activism. We encourage you to tweet, to post on Instagram, reach out to everyone and anyone to encourage them to participate. And we want to encourage you to become involved in the work of the Trotter Collaborative. That is to say, go to our website. We're looking for partner organizations. That is to say, we work with grassroots organizations. We literally have students, young activists and advocates working with mayors to bring about transformation of police departments, to bring about an end to discrimination against people in the LGBTQ community. We have students writing statutes to bring about an end to hate crime, to bring about true bail reform. So we literally have young people who are doing the work in this moment, creating justice in real time. And so I just want to close with this note. We all remember well that Rosa Parks has often been described as a quiet and older woman who sat down on a bus because she was tired. A more accurate reading of history and a more accurate reading of her biography is that she was a rebellious woman, a constructively rebellious and constructively radical Black woman who sat down on a bus at the age of 42 in order that a nation might rise up against racial discrimination. History also tells us that while she did that at 42, more than 10 years before, at 31, she went to the side of Mrs. Recy Taylor, who was sexually assaulted. And so Rosa Parks went to the side of Recy Taylor and investigated an assault, launched a national movement against sexual assault back in the 40s. And so this Rosa Parks, who sat down on the bus, this Rosa Parks launched a criminal justice investigation. This Rosa Parks, who at the age of 30 launched a national movement. As a child, she was described as feisty. The point of the story, the point of this civil rights parable is that at whatever age you are qualified to be an activist, qualified to be a social justice academic, qualified to be an advocate. You are never too young and never too old. You can't be carded and kept out of a movement as in being too young, and you can never be given a retirement card and deemed to be too old. And so tomorrow we're asking that those of you who are younger or older to come back and join us for a second day. And I just want to note here, we're going to end the day with a teaching experience. We invite your questions. We invite your engagement. We invite your participation. This is an extraordinary gathering as a consequence of your participation and your engagement. So with that said, in the spirit of our forebears, we ask that you gather tomorrow for this Academy of Citizen Activism. Thank you so much for being with us. Continue to partner with us and support the work.